Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This is not something that happened to me. It's a story my professor told us that happened to him. I think this is a true story, but then again, I wasn't there, so I will literally be the judge of that. I thought it belonged here though. I hope to do this story justice. Trigger warnings, attempted murder, drowning, and a lot of strong words. Cast: Professor, my teacher. Karen, well, it's a Karen. And LG, a fellow lifeguard and friend. When Professor was in high school, he worked summers as a lifeguard to earn some cash. He has many interesting stories from his time as a lifeguard because many interesting people apparently attend public pools. This pool was divided in half by a lap lane. On the top half of the pool were the shallows with a set of stairs for the kiddies. On the bottom half was a small slide that emptied out in the deep end. In hindsight, this was probably a bad design because it meant that kids would constantly swim through the lap lane to get to the slide and back again. Now there was this one lady who would frequent the pool. She would always bring a snorkel and flippers and swim the lap lane. As any sane person would do. It's the peak of summer and the pool is full of kids and their families doing as kids do. Racing each other across the pool, seeing who can hold their breath the longest, flinging water at each other and so on. Along came Karen, waddling over in her flipper, snorkel piece dangling out of her mouth. She jumped into the pool and began to swim her laps with her flippers and snorkel, as every normal person does. Everything is fine for half an hour until Professor spotted Karen rising menacingly from the water like a Loch Ness monster. She stood by the edge of the pool and screams, "Get these effing kids out of the effing lap lane!" Professor Pete in high school was taken aback by this. He approached her and said, "Whoa, dude, this is a family pool. You cannot say those things." Karen just glared at him. "Mother, father, you had one effing job. Keep these effing kids out of my lap lane." She jumped back into the pool and swam halfway down before being intercepted by some more kids. She whirled back around and screams, "This is the one place I can go to get away from my effing kids. I deserve this. Get these effing kids out of here." Professor asked her to leave the pool due to language. She began to slowly get out of the pool, looking exasperated. Do you guys know the look people get when they are thinking real hard about something? You can see the gears in their head churning and you know that it won't be good. That was the expression Karen was making as she planned her next move. Karen turned away from the pool, shoved her snorkel back into her mouth and fell backwards into the pool, all the while flipping Professor the double birds. Karen began to angrily swim down towards the other end of the pool. Professor could tell how mad she was by the heavy puffing coming from the snorkel. Puff, puff, puff. Now there was a group of 6th grade girls by the lap lane. They were supposed to be watching their toddler brother who was paddling around with green floaties. But these are 12-ish-year-old girls. They are obviously not watching him. They are chatting and playing games as people should be in a public pool. Naturally, the boy scrambles over the lane, divides and eats himself into the lap lane. Puff, puff, puff. Karen came huffing down the lane, getting closer and closer to the boy. I personally like to imagine this with the jazz music playing in the background. Professor knew instantly that this won't be good, but he was on the opposite side of the pool and watched in horror as Karen grabbed the boy. The boy is so small that her hands fit around his waist, her fingertips nearly touching along his back. Karen rips the green floaties from this kid's arms and shoves him under the water, holding him there. Have you ever seen a person drowning? Their eyes snap wide, their pupils dilate as they lose control over their actions, causing them to flail wildly, even if they know how to swim. As soon as that kid began to spasm and twist, adrenaline took over. Professor had made saves before, but none like this. With all lifeguard training forgotten, he leapt into the pool, shoved Karen away, "Get off him!" And he grabbed a hold of this kid and swam with him to the shore and hefted him onto the poolside. He called out to his friend and lifeguard co-worker, "Get the water out," because he couldn't for the life of him remember how to administer chest compressions. The rage within Karen subsided and the heavy feeling of wrongdoing set in. She grew eerily quiet when she realized what she had done. Professor roared for her to get out of the pool. The police were called and Karen got rightfully arrested. I don't know what happened after, but thankfully, that boy turned out to be fine, at least physically. So let me give you some information about this situation. I'm 18 years old, 17 years old when this happened, and I live in the Netherlands. And I work at a local supermarket where I work as a stock clerk. Don't really know how to translate that. Almost every week we have a discount on certain items. It's called a bonus, and sometimes when you buy 2 to 3 items from one brand, you get some special product from that brand. A Lipton iced tea hat when you buy a certain amount of bottles and so on. That week when you bought 3 items from this kid's brand, you get this rather creepy looking doll. This is basically what the story is based around. And oh boy am I glad we don't offer kids toys with these products anymore. Just like everyone in this subreddit, I never thought something like this would happen to me. But here we go, it did. I was working in the afternoon on a Thursday like usual when a kid, the entitled kid of the story, walks by slowly. I of course don't think anything of this as I'm just doing my job. She walks by 3 times and the 4th time she asks me if the dolls are out of stock. I explained to her that more will be coming that evening, and that she would unfortunately have to wait. She asked how late and I told her that they will probably arrive after closing time because of a delayed shipment. So she would have to wait until the next day. She walked away with quite a sad face, and I felt bad for her. Though I continued working, I didn't really think about it anymore. Fast forward a bit to around 2 hours later, it's almost closing time, just 5 more minutes, and I was pretty tired. This is where the entitled mother comes in, without her entitled kid. And she looked angry. The mother stomps straight towards me and quite angrily asks me if I was the boy that told her daughter that she couldn't have one of those dolls. Me, being so tired, looks at her with a confused face, and after processing the question, I remember the kid that asked for the doll. Yeah, that's me. Do you know you made my little girl cry? I'm sorry for upsetting your daughter, but the dolls are out of stock and won't arrive until tonight. She cut me off though. I don't care about the time it arrives. You will get me a doll right now or I will make sure you get fired. I will do everything to make sure more dolls arrive as soon as possible, but the store closes in 5 minutes and she cuts me off again. I want to look in the back. I don't believe you. She was pretty much screaming at the moment. I saw a colleague of mine in another part of the store look up from the work he was doing and listen to where the noise was coming from. He just continued doing his work and I did not want to call him because I thought I could handle this myself. Nah. I bring the entitled mother to the back where we keep the dolls when we have them, and I normally never let people into this section because it's only for employees. But I didn't want her to go super Karen, so I let her in. I grabbed one of the terminals. It's a small device that we use to keep track of the stock in the warehouse and the quantity of products we order in the next shipment. I show her that there is currently no dolls in the store, and before I can show her the order we place for new dolls, she grabs the terminal, which is worth around 1,400 euros or $1,600 at the time, and throws it on the ground. I immediately asked my boss to come to the warehouse through my earpiece. The entitled mother knows she can't touch me or cause me any harm because A, I'm under the age of 18, so it's basically child abuse, and B, there is cameras everywhere, and she already knew that. But apparently only point A interests her, and she proceeded to kick all the wagons of goods we have standing in the warehouse. She also threw 6 packs of drinks on the floor, which made a horrible mess. After about 1 minute of this constant fear in me, my boss and 3 team leaders arrived in the warehouse to take a look at the situation. My boss was, well, not happy with the situation, Apparently, he took some kind of fight training because he grabs the entitled mother in a certain position, so she's pinned on the ground with nowhere to move. And one of the team leaders is asked to call the police. Within 20 minutes, the police arrived at our warehouse. I was surprised that the woman did not attempt to kick or slap my boss, because she has been lying on the ground for this long. The two policemen are guided to the office by the two team leader while me and the third team leader and my boss are still in the back of the store. After about 10 minutes, which felt like an eternity for me, the policeman and the team leader came back and one of the policemen put the woman in handcuffs. After that, we all go to the office and the entitled mother is giving me death glares the entire way there. She also kind of whisperingly swears at me and calls me all the names out there. When we get to the office, I feared I would have done something wrong that would indeed get me fired. And this begins with the entitled mother having the right to talk before me. Of course, she lies in a pretty big way, literally saying that I harassed her kid. The officers probably already knew that was not the case and asked some questions about that to me. I was struggling to find the right words because I have never been in a situation like this, and I was on the verge of crying. I told them they needed to check the camera footage from 2.5 hours before this, and they found the moment where the girl came up to me and I didn't put a finger near her. The boss compliments me for keeping enough distance due to COVID back then, but that didn't really come through to me because I could only think of what could happen if they did not believe me. I knew the proof was there that I didn't touch the kid at all. That was nice to know. The policeman knew enough and took the woman away from us, probably off to the police station where she deserves to be. My boss and the team leaders compliment me on handling the situation and come with me to the warehouse to help me clean up. My boss noticed I wasn't in a good state to continue working, and he gave me a can of soda and told me I could go to the break room to take a break to cool down from all of this. Eventually, he just sent me home because I was too emotional from all of the threats the woman was constantly throwing at me. When I came home, I told my parents the entire story and they were shocked. They asked me if I wanted to continue working there and I did. There was nothing wrong with the place itself, just very rarely the people that buy stuff there. Me and boss later made the rule of not doing this with adults and children's toys anymore, because this has already happened a few times before. Not this bad, but still. I believed it would be better that way, and it really was for the best since we never encountered something like that again. I heard the story at a union conference about 5 years ago. It was presented as one of the union victories for the year. There was a company who employed around 20 or so cleaners. The award agreement for the amount of cleaners worked by square feet of floor space, number of toilets, number of hand basins, number of staff kitchens, bins, and so on. Both union and management had got to the same number and the staff were working fairly. After a couple of years, new management took over and stopped using casual cleaners for backfill for leave, etc. This meant each day they are basically short staff, not making the agreement terms. Then a couple staff leave and are not replaced. Management started complaining that the place isn't up standard and customers had complained. They threatened the staff with punishment and so on. One of the cleaners calls a union and the union calls an industrial dispute with the employer. In the dispute, the employer has nowhere to go on this. The award spells out the formula for staffing and the union basically says, if you don't like it, we will take you to court and you lose after spending a heap of money. HR argued but basically agreed to employ more staff and put some casuals on. They say, well, it may take a few weeks to advertise and interview, etc., so you will have to be patient. There was a real feeling that they were not going to try too hard. The union says sure, but on these conditions. 1. You can no longer threaten punishments about work due to the short staffing. 2. You try your best to get staff. 3. The cleaners will clean only the amount covered by the award each day. 4. Any complaints to be given to the union, not the staff during this time. The third point becomes a sticking point, but HR agree on the condition that cleaners make the customer side of the business a priority. It's agreed upon. The union leaves with a distinct impression. HR will drag their feet on employing new staff, and the union goes to the staff and says what happened, and the staff are unhappy about not getting more staff immediately. The union organizer says, "You only have to clean the customer side of the business, and we ask you not to clean any of the HR staff offices, tea rooms, or toilets." The same goes for the executive staff area of any department manager's office. Do not even empty a bin there. Be completely compliant with the offer. So after a week, HR hasn't advertised or employed any new staff, but the cleaners report that all the office kitchens in HR and executive look untidy and the bathrooms smell a bit. Bins are filling up fast, etc. At the beginning of the second week, the union gets a phone call about cleaners not doing their work from HR. The union asks if the customer side is clean, and they agree it's very clean. Well, the union says this is our agreement. Still, HR doesn't advertise for jobs. By the end of the second week, the CEO asks the cleaners why the offices look terrible. And the cleaners say ring the union. There are complaints coming from everywhere in the company about the state of staff, amenities, and so on, and the CEO is unhappy. The CEO rings and organizes a meeting with the union for the next day. By this stage, the executive office bins are overflowing, the manager's offices are dusty, and the bathrooms are far from clean. And since no cleaner has been in there is no soap or toilet paper. In the meeting, the CEO asks what's going on with the union members. The union organizer explains about their deal with the HR and the short staffing. The union organizer states that we have been completely compliant with what was asked of us. The CEO claims he was unaware and he was livid. HR is wrong and asked to explain. HR gets blasted and jobs get advertised that day. A deal is struck for overtime for any cleaner who will clean the offices of the executives. The union had the extra staff employed within 2 weeks, plus a casual pool. Some of the union members picked up some handy overtime money too. Every meeting with the company after that was highly productive for the union and its members. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.